Welcome to the Music Nut Program. I'm John. Thank you so much for joining me today. And welcome back to the latest edition of It's Chris Whitley Wednesday. On today's show, I will review Chris Whitley's 11th album, released on July 26, 2005, on Messenger Records, Soft, Dangerous Shores. This would be the last Chris Whitley release that was put out during his lifetime. This is a very atmospheric, sensual album. A lot of keyboards on it, but they're here for soundscapes, here to create the mood. Very heavy on the percussion on this album as well. So let's get into the musicians and who produced the album. Malcolm Byrne produced this album. Malcolm Byrne produced Chris Whitley's US debut, Living with the Law. Totally different production here. I must tell you that straight out. We got Heiko Schramm on bass guitars and Matthias Macht on drums and percussion. You may know them for playing on Chris Whitley's Hotel Vast Horizon album. Malcolm Byrne is also here on keyboards, programming, and processing. As far as other musicians on this album, Chris, of course, is on here with vocals, guitars, and banjo. We got Trixie Whitley, who's guested on several of Chris's albums. This is Chris's daughter, who is a outstanding singer-songwriter in her own right today. She sings with Chris on Medicine Wheel. We got Chris's brother Dan Whitley on electric guitar on Fire Road for Two and Soft Dangerous Shores. We have Aaron Commerce on drums for the track Last Million Miles. So, as I indicated, album is very heavy on percussion and keyboards, a lot of soundscapes. Chris's guitar is here more for feel. Some songs moments of songs you'll hear his guitar up front. But more often than not, it's the keyboards and the rhythms really carrying the way. This is a sensual album, not only in Chris's vocal performances, but lyrically as well. Chris's vocals at this point, he was very husky, but you could tell that his voice was noticeably weaker from just the two albums he did the previous year, War Crime Blues and Weed, respectively. So Fire Road for Two is the opener, and this is a wonderful song. Very cryptic lyrics, and then you read these lyrics on this album, you knew Chris knew where this was near the end for him. That's just a feeling that I had. When I first heard this album, it just didn't sound like Chris was well when I heard it, but I was still very surprised that he was gone less than 4 months later. But this is an excellent opener. A little different than a lot of Chris's other openers. One thing I could say about this album, you take the most really creative avant-garde sounds on like Rocket House. That sounds very conventional to this whole album. The title track, very heavy on the percussion. During the verses, you hear Chris's guitars, but then when he goes into the chorus, you hear these bright keyboards. Very colorful, and they really bring you in. Very strong track. As Day Is Long is more driving, more guitar on this song. Very sparse on the lyrics, but it's that feel. It's really brings you in. The guitar work on here, very strong. Again, you're not going to get crazy solos on here like you had on the early albums. It's more here for color. Valley of the Innocents, is a lot more laid back and reflective. The guitars more prominent near the end of the album. Again, it's about that sense of space and that sense of drama provided by the keyboards on here. City of Women is very, very sensual. Probably Chris's finest vocal performance on the album. Everything is in its right place as far as the instruments here. You're following Chris's vocal on this while you hear these sounds coming in and out. Very sparse but very classy guitar playing from Chris, and the keyboards really bring a lot to this track as well. It's 6.5 minutes, but it doesn't feel like that because of Chris's vocal performance and the lyrics. The next track is Times Square Machine, New York City, February 1991. Just sounds like a recording from that time and then that place. And it's only about 54 seconds. Then we go into Her Furious Angels, which was originally released on War Crime Blues. This is a much different version here. The guitars are in here, but it's more those keyboard loops and drum loops that are really carrying the track. You notice that Chris's vocal is definitely weaker on this than it was on War Crime Blues. It's a pretty cool version, though. I like it a lot. It fits in with the album itself. Last Million Miles. This is where Aaron Thomas is guesting on the drums. Very heavy on the drums and the airy keyboards on this. Very hypnotic. City of Women's hypnotic too, but while that one's more laid back, this is pretty kinetic, chaotic, pretty cool track. Medicine Wheel. This is where Trixie guests with Chris on the choruses. This is another cool track. Again, very sparse lyrically, but it's about the mood that they're trying to create here. This is very cool. Endgame Holiday. This sounds like Chris is preparing for the inevitable between the lyric and his vocal performance. It's pretty sad when you listen to it now. It leads into Breath of Shadows, which is that same feel, but now you got Chris on the banjo. The last lyrics, and you travel, inhalations, breath of shadows, last us now till our return. That's what you hear at the end. Then you get a break. You got this hidden track at the end. And they go back into Endgame Holiday, but now it's a lot more solemn. You have this very sparse piano, and then Chris's vocal kicks in, and it sounds like he's crying to me. And pretty emotional way to end the album. In the end, he's has this note at the end that just ends the album, and that would be the last thing we'd hear during his lifetime. This album is very different. I've been saying throughout this series that Chris was an artist. That couldn't be more evident on this album. He went out on a high note during his lifetime. He was always, he searching. He was a restless spirit musically, right to the end. I wouldn't recommend this to be the first Chris Whitley album you buy, but if you get in, when you get in, it's a great place. Then go experience it. If you want to hear something a little different, very sensual and percussive, this is a very strong album. Very well done. It works well as a piece. I've said that about a few other albums of Chris's. This is probably the one that works best as a piece. It's a 41-minute album. So, pretty tight. So, what do you think of Chris Whitley's Soft Dangerous Choice? Have you heard this album? And if you have, what do you think of it? It was pretty highly acclaimed by the critics. Fans, most of them loved it. Some of them were not too high on it. They didn't say it was disappointing, but they said it wasn't the greatest way to go out. I thought it was a wonderful way to go out. So, to let you know, I will be reviewing 3 more Chris Whitley albums that came out posthumously. Join me next week on It's Chris Whitley Wednesday when I review his 12th album, released in 2006, with The Bastard Club, Writer In. And once again, very, very interesting album. This is a lot louder and more abrasive. There are some quieter moments on here also, but again, very well worth checking out, and I'll get into that next week when I continue It's Chris Whitley Wednesday. Just to let you know of some programming. I was on Tim's Vinyl Confessions on Monday, March 17, where we reviewed the latest Thin Lizzy record, Acoustic Sessions. This is the album that came out in January with acoustic versions of tracks from the first 3 Thin Lizzy albums as well as the New Day EP. So be sure to check that out on Tim's Vinyl Confessions. This Saturday, which will be March 22nd, 2025 at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Join Tom Curlis from Curlis Mania, Davey Cretin from Cretin Classics, as well as myself as we join Daniel Bosch, known as Bicycle Legs, on Bicycle Legs Talks Music here on YouTube, where we talk about our favorite self-titled albums that were not debut albums. This was a fun discussion, and we ran the gamut through different decades, different genres. Great, great show. I'm looking forward to watching the premiere, and I hope you all check it out as well. So, until I see you all again, do what you love, and I'll talk to you soon.